I was taking out the trash when I found it, a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines, positive. Renee was in the kitchen, humming something, pouring her second cup of coffee. I could hear the clink of the spoon against the mug. Normal Tuesday morning sounds. I stood in my home office holding that test and staring at it like it was a set of numbers that didn't add up, and I've been reading numbers my whole life. These didn't add up at all. We hadn't slept together in 8 months. I set the test back in the trash bag, tied it, walked it out to the bin at the side of the house. Came back in, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table. Morning, Renee said without looking up from her phone. Morning, I said. That was the whole conversation. My name is Carl Whitfield. I'm 61 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, and 28 years ago, I started a building materials distribution company called Whitfield Building Supply out of a rented warehouse in Gresham. With 1 used truck and a line of credit I had no business asking for. Last year, we did $40 million in revenue. I have 67 employees. I know every one of them by name. My wife, Renee, is 57. She's been the director of operations at Whitfield for the last 11 years. Before that, she worked in logistics for a regional contractor. She's sharp, organized, and for most of our 26 years together, she was the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, at home and at the office. We don't have children together. Renee has a son from her first marriage, grown now, lives in Seattle. We built this life together from what we each brought into it. The company, the house, the routine, it wasn't flashy, but it was solid. Or I thought it was. The distance started about 18 months ago, gradual at first. She stopped asking about my day, started spending more time in her office with the door closed. At home, she was polite, but somewhere else. I told myself it was stress. The business had been through a rough patch, supply chain issues, rising costs. We were both carrying a lot. I gave her space because that's what I thought she needed. 8 months ago, the bedroom went quiet. One night I reached for her, and she shifted away without a word. I tried again a few weeks later, same thing. After the 3rd time I stopped trying, she didn't say anything. Neither did I. We became 2 people who shared a house and a company, and not much else. I'm not a man who does nothing, but I'm also not a man who blows up without knowing what he's blowing up at. So I watched, I paid attention. And about 6 months ago, I started noticing things at the office that bothered me more than the silence at home. Small things in the financials. A vendor payment that cleared faster than it should have. A reclassification in Q3 that Gary had explained, but that I kept coming back to. Gary Stoll was our CFO. I hired him 4 years ago when we crossed $25 million, and I needed someone who could build real financial infrastructure. He came with strong references, a track record at 2 other regional companies, and a confidence I found reassuring at the time. I flagged the Q3 item. Gary walked me through it. Reasonable explanation. I let it go. Then in September, Neil Doran knocked on my office door. Neil has been our controller for 17 years. He started when we were still running out of that first warehouse. He's not a man who knocks on doors unless he has something to say. He closed the door behind him, sat down, and put a single printed page on my desk. "I need you to look at this," he said. It was a wire transfer, $290,000. Sent to an entity called Stoll Capital Partners LLC, no vendor record, no board authorization, no paper trail connecting it to any approved expense. I looked at the page for a long time. "Who else has seen this?" I asked. "Nobody," Neil said. "I found it doing the quarter-end reconciliation. I came straight to you. Keep it that way," I said. "Don't talk to Gary. Don't talk to anyone. Go back to your desk and act like this conversation didn't happen." Neil nodded and left. I sat there for a while after he was gone. Then I picked up my personal cell and called Ted Pruitt. Ted has been my corporate attorney for 19 years. I told him what I had. He told me to hire a forensic accountant, pay out of pocket, keep it completely off the company books, and not say a word to anyone inside the building until we knew what we were dealing with. I had a name and a number by end of day. The forensic accountant, a woman named Pat Galvez, started the following Monday. I gave her remote access to the financial systems through a secure channel Ted set up. She was methodical. She didn't rush. And 3 weeks later, she put a report in front of me that was worse than anything I had imagined. The $290,000 wasn't a one-time event. It was the most recent transfer in a pattern going back 14 months. Smaller amounts early on, structured to stay below the threshold that would trigger automatic review. The total was $610,000, all of it to Stoll Capital Partners LLC, an entity registered in Delaware with Gary Stoll listed as the sole member. But the money was only part of it. Pat had also found a series of emails pulled from a backup server Gary apparently didn't know existed, in which he had been communicating with 2 of our independent board members. The emails contained financial summaries showing Whitfield Building Supply in serious decline. Numbers I didn't recognize, numbers that had been altered. The narrative in those emails was that I had lost my focus, that the company was drifting, and that a leadership transition was necessary to protect shareholder value. Gary wasn't just stealing from the company, he was building a case to push me out of it. I sat in my office at 11 o'clock that night with Pat's report on one side of my desk and a separate folder on the other side. The second folder had nothing to do with money, it had to do with Renee. I want to explain how I found out because it wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't a phone call I overheard or a receipt I stumbled across. It was a calendar. Renee and I had shared an Outlook calendar for 10 years. It started because we ran the same company and needed to coordinate. Over time, it became habit. Board meetings, vendor visits, site inspections. All of it synced between our two accounts. Neither of us thought twice about it. About 3 months ago, I was checking the shared calendar to schedule a contractor walkthrough, and I noticed a recurring block on Renee's side. Every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., the label said one-to-one with Gary, off-site. I stared at that for a while. Whitfield Building Supply has a perfectly functional conference room. We have 2 private offices. There is no operational reason for any internal meeting to be off-site twice a week for what I counted back as at least 6 months of entries. I didn't say anything to Renee. I went to our fleet management system instead. Every company vehicle has a GPS unit. Gary drove a company-issued truck. I pulled the location history for the past 90 days and cross-referenced it against those Tuesday and Thursday blocks. The address that came up consistently was the Marriott Waterfront on Southwest Naito Parkway. I looked at that address on a Tuesday. Then I looked at it on a Thursday, same place, same time window, every single week. I closed the browser, leaned back in my chair, and understood something I had been moving around the edges of for months without quite letting myself see it. Gary Stoll was not just stealing from my company. He was sleeping with my wife, and based on the pregnancy test I had found that morning in the trash, one of those 2 facts had produced a consequence neither of them had planned for. I didn't go home angry that night. I went home the same way I'd been going home for weeks. Made dinner, asked Renee how the Portland Metro account was progressing. She said fine, some delays with the permits. I said that was frustrating. We watched the news, she went to bed before me. I sat at the kitchen table after she was gone, and I thought about what kind of man I was going to be. The version of me from 20 years ago would have walked into that bedroom and started a fire, but that version of me also would have lost everything in the process. I had spent 28 years building something real. I was not going to hand Gary Stoll an emotional breakdown to use against me on top of everything else he had already taken. I called Ted Pruitt the next morning and told him I needed to add a personal layer to what we were already working on. He didn't ask questions. He told me to document everything, keep it separate from the corporate matter, and not confront anyone until we had completed both investigations in full. That same week, I reached out to Sandra Stoll. I want to be clear about why I did that. It wasn't to cause damage. It wasn't strategy in the cold sense. It was because Sandra deserved to know what her husband had been doing, the same way I would have wanted someone to tell me. I found her contact through the company directory. Gary had listed her as his emergency contact when he joined 4 years ago. I sent her a short message from my personal email. I told her I had information about her husband that I believed she had a right to know. I told her I wasn't looking for anything from her. I just thought she should hear it. She responded within 2 hours. She said she had been wondering for months. She asked when we could meet. We met at a coffee shop in Lake Oswego, far enough from Portland that neither of us would run into anyone we knew. Sandra was 44, composed in the way that people are when they have been quietly bracing themselves for bad news for a long time. She sat across from me with her hands flat on the table and listened while I laid out what I had. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then she reached into her bag and put her phone on the table between us. She had text messages going back 14 months. Conversations between Gary and a contact he had saved under a vendor name, which Sandra had figured out was not a vendor. The messages were not explicit, but they were not ambiguous either. Late nights, canceled dinners, inside references to places and conversations. Sandra had also found something else, a transfer notification from their joint savings account. $18,000 moved without her knowledge to an account she didn't recognize, Stoll Capital Partners. He had funded part of his own shell company with their personal savings. I looked at that transfer notification on her phone and understood that Gary had been running the same play in 2 different games at the same time, taking from the company, taking from his marriage, using both to build something he thought nobody would ever untangle. He was wrong. Sandra asked me what I was planning to do. I told her I was going to remove him from the company, recover what he had taken, and file for divorce from Renee. I told her the timeline was about 3 weeks. I asked if she was willing to let me use the transfer records in the corporate proceedings with her permission as additional evidence of a pattern of financial misconduct. She said yes without hesitating. Then she asked if I was okay. It was a simple question and I wasn't expecting it. I told her I was fine. She looked at me the way people look at you when they know you're not being entirely straight with them, but they're going to let it go. We shook hands in the parking lot and drove in opposite directions. I had 3 weeks of work ahead of me. I wasn't going to waste a single day of it. The next 3 weeks were the most focused I had been in years. Ted Pruitt worked on the corporate side. Pat Galvez finished her forensic report and formatted it for legal use. I worked on the ownership side alone, quietly, the way I do everything when the stakes are high enough. Whitfield Building Supply had 9 shareholders total. I held 56% directly. Renee held 8% from a transfer I had made early in our marriage. The remaining 36% was split among 6 outside investors and 3 smaller employee shareholders who had come in through a profit-sharing arrangement we set up in 2014. Gary held none. He was a W-2 employee, no equity, that had been intentional on my part when I hired him, and it turned out to be one of the better decisions I had made. The problem was the 2 independent board members Gary had been working. Together, they represented influence over 14% of shareholder votes through advisory agreements. They couldn't override me on their own, but Gary had clearly been building toward a scenario where, combined with Renee's 8% and whatever pressure he could manufacture through the falsified financials, he might be able to force a governance review that would tie my hands long enough to complete the takeover. I identified 3 of the smaller shareholders who I knew had been thinking about liquidity. I reached out to each of them personally, not through lawyers, not through intermediaries. I called each one myself. I made fair offers above current book value, and I was transparent that I was consolidating my position. All 3 accepted within 10 days. I now held 67% of the company. No combination of remaining shareholders could touch that. Gary's entire plan collapsed the moment those transfers cleared, and he had no idea it had happened. Ted filed the paperwork to call a special board meeting, 48 hours notice per our corporate charter. The stated agenda was a routine governance matter. Gary received the same notice as everyone else. Nothing in the language flagged what was actually coming. The night before the meeting, I sat in my home office for a long time, not reviewing documents, not running through what I was going to say. I had already done all of that. I was just sitting with the fact that in the morning I was going to walk into a room and dismantle something that another man had spent 14 months building inside my company, and that the woman who had helped him do it, even if she hadn't known every detail, was asleep down the hall. Renee and I had built 26 years together. The company, the house, a life that looked from any reasonable distance like something solid, and somewhere in the last 18 months she had decided that wasn't enough, or that Gary stole was something she needed more. Or maybe she had just stopped seeing me at all. I didn't know which one it was. I still don't. What I knew was that a pregnancy test in a trash bag had confirmed something that the calendar and the GPS and 8 months of silence had already been telling me. I wasn't angry. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect anger in a situation like this, and I'm not sure I had much left by that point. What I had was clarity. The kind you get when you stop hoping something isn't true and just accept that it is. I went to bed at midnight. I slept fine. The board meeting was at 9 a.m. I arrived first. Ted was already there with Pat Galvez and an independent auditor we had brought in specifically for this meeting. The 2 board members Gary had been cultivating came in together, which told me something. Neil Doran sat in the corner with a printed copy of the forensic report. I had asked him to be there as a witness. Gary walked in at 8:58. He was carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the same confident expression he wore to every meeting. He looked around the room, registered the extra faces, and I watched that expression shift by about 10 degrees. Not panic, not yet. Just the first flicker of someone realizing the room is not what they expected. He sat down across from me. I didn't open with a speech. I put Pat's report in the center of the table, and I let it sit there for a moment. We're here because of this, I said. Gary looked at the report. Then he looked at me. Carl, whatever you think you've found, I can explain the accounting on those transfers. There were vendor timing issues that Pat may not have full context on. Pat has full context, I said. She also has the Delaware incorporation documents for Stoll Capital Partners. She has the wire confirmations, and she has the emails you sent to Richard and Tom over the past 4 months. I watched him go still. The 2 board members, Richard and Tom, had not known the full picture until that morning. Ted had sent them each a brief summary at 7 a.m., giving them 2 hours to process it before the meeting. Neither of them said anything now. They were both looking at the table. You have 2 options, I said to Gary. You resign effective immediately, cooperate fully with the recovery process, and we handle this as a civil matter. Or we refer this to the district attorney's office this afternoon and you deal with what comes next on your own. Gary was quiet for a long moment. His portfolio was still closed in front of him. He hadn't opened it once. I want to talk to my attorney, he said. You can call him from the parking lot, Ted said. But the resignation letter needs to be signed before you leave this building. Gary looked at me one more time. I don't know what he was looking for. Whatever it was, he didn't find it. He signed the letter at 9:41 a.m. I drove home from the board meeting at 10:30 in the morning. Renee's car was in the driveway. She worked from home on Fridays. I had counted on that. I walked in through the front door and she was at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a mug of tea going cold beside it. She looked up when I came in, registered that I was home at an unusual hour, and said nothing. That was one of the things that had changed over the last 18 months. The old Renee would have asked why I was home early. This version just watched and waited. I sat down across from her. I put 3 folders on the table. I need you to look at these, I said. She looked at the folders, then at me. What is this? The first one is from our forensic accountant. It covers what Gary has been taking from the company for the past 14 months and how he planned to use it. I pushed the second folder toward her. This one has the calendar records, the GPS logs, and the hotel receipts from the Marriott waterfront. I set the third folder down last, and this one is from Ted Pruitt. It's a draft divorce filing. Renee did not move for a long moment. She looked at the folders the way you look at something you already know is there but were hoping wouldn't be. Carl, she said, I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm not here to hear an explanation. I've had 3 weeks to sit with this and I know everything I need to know. What I want to say is simple. We built this together for 26 years. The company, this house, everything, and you had every right to tell me something was wrong. You had every right to say you were unhappy, that you wanted out, that whatever we had wasn't working anymore. I would have listened. That's the part I keep coming back to. You could have just told me. She opened her mouth and closed it again. How long have you known? She asked. About Gary and the company since September. About you and Gary, about 3 months. The pregnancy test I found 3 weeks ago confirmed the rest. She looked down at the table. I didn't know what he was doing to the company. I believe you, I said, and I did. Renee was a lot of things, but she had spent 11 years helping me build Whitfield from the inside. She wouldn't have helped someone dismantle it. That part I was sure about. Does he know? I asked. About the pregnancy, she was quiet for a moment. I told him last week. And she didn't answer. She didn't need to. Whatever Gary Stoll had said when she told him, it clearly had not been what she was hoping for. That didn't surprise me. A man who was simultaneously stealing from a company, manipulating a board, and conducting a 14-month affair was not a man who was going to step up cleanly when things got complicated. He resigned this morning, I said. He'll be entering into a civil settlement to repay what he took. If he doesn't cooperate, Ted files a criminal referral. Renee looked up at me. The divorce filing is straightforward, I said. Oregon is a no-fault state, but adultery is documented, and that affects the asset division. Ted has laid it out in the third folder. You keep your car, your personal accounts, and your personal property. The company shares revert to me as part of the settlement. The house goes to me. There's no alimony claim that holds given the circumstances. Carl, please. Her voice was quiet, not angry, just tired. I know I don't have any ground to stand on. I know that, but I need you to know that what happened between me and Gary wasn't something I planned. It started because I felt like I had disappeared. Like I was just a function in your company and a presence in your house and not a person you actually saw anymore. I listened to the whole thing. I didn't interrupt her. When she finished, I said, I hear that, and maybe some of that is true. Maybe I stopped seeing you the way I should have. I'm not going to sit here and tell you our marriage was perfect. But what I know is that you had 26 years to say those words to me directly. What you chose instead cost us both more than it needed to. She didn't argue with that. She signed the divorce papers 11 days later. Her attorney reviewed them, suggested 2 minor changes that Ted agreed to, and that was it. No court battle, no extended negotiation. I think on some level she understood that fighting it would only make more of what had happened public, and she had no interest in that. Renee left the company the same week. She gave her notice formally, transitioned her files to Neil, and was gone by the end of the month. I heard from one of her friends that she moved to Seattle to be closer to her son. I wished her well in the way you wish well to someone you once loved and now mostly feel the absence of. The civil settlement with Gary took 4 months to finalize. He repaid $610,000 in company funds plus interest and legal fees. He avoided criminal charges in exchange for full cooperation and assigned non-disclosure. His professional reputation in the Pacific Northwest regional market was finished regardless. Word travels in this industry. People talk. Sandra filed for divorce the same week I did. She got the house, primary custody of their 2 kids, and a significant portion of the assets, including the $180,000 Gary had moved from their joint savings. The court did not look kindly on that particular detail. I heard through Ted about 2 months after everything was finalized that Renee had lost the pregnancy. Miscarriage at 9 weeks. I sat with that information for a while. I didn't feel relieved exactly. I didn't feel glad. I felt the way you feel when something that was already over becomes a little more completely over. I went back to work. Going back to work sounds simple. It wasn't. Not because the company was in bad shape. Financially, once Gary's settlement cleared and Pat's audit was complete, Whitfield Building Supply was in better condition than it had been in 2 years. The falsified reports had made things look worse than they were. The real numbers were solid. We had strong regional accounts, a dependable crew, and Neil Doran holding the controller role with the same steadiness he had brought to every crisis I had ever watched him navigate. The hard part was walking into a building where I had spent 28 years building something alongside a woman who was no longer there. Her name was still on documents. Her systems were still running. Her handwriting was still on the whiteboard in the operations room where someone had not yet thought to erase it. Little things that show up in the corners of a day and remind you that the version of your life you thought you had is not the one you actually ended up with. I started seeing a therapist in January. I want to say that plainly because I think men my age were raised to treat that as an admission of weakness, and I've come to think that's one of the more expensive pieces of bad advice our generation absorbed. I went because I wanted to understand something specific. Not why Renee did what she did. Not why Gary thought he could get away with it. I wanted to understand how I had missed it for so long. How a man who built a company by paying attention to details had stopped paying attention to the most important ones. My therapist, a straightforward woman named Dr. Carol Reeves, said something in our third session that I've thought about most days since. She said, "Carl, you didn't miss it because you were careless. You missed it because you were loyal. You extended the same trust to the people closest to you that you built your business on. That's not a character flaw. That's just what it costs sometimes." I'm still not sure I entirely agree with her, but I think about it. By spring, the company was running well. I had promoted Neil to CFO on an interim basis, and we were in the process of a proper search for a permanent hire. This time with a much more rigorous vetting process and a very different set of contractual protections. I had also put in place a financial oversight structure that Ted and Pat designed together, with quarterly independent audits and dual authorization requirements on any transfer over $25,000. It was the kind of governance I should have built years earlier. I built it now. In April, I went to a small business conference at the Portland Marriott. Not the waterfront location, a different one. I almost didn't go. Conferences have never been my preferred way to spend a day, but Neil had recommended a session on regional supply chain restructuring, and I had a meeting nearby that afternoon anyway. I sat through 2 panels and was getting coffee during the break between sessions when the woman next to me reached past me for the creamer and knocked my cup sideways. Coffee went across the table and onto my sleeve. She was horrified, grabbed napkins from the dispenser, and started apologizing before I had even processed what happened. I told her it was fine. It genuinely was. We cleaned it up and she introduced herself, Beverly Holt, 54 years old. She taught 10th grade English at a high school in Beaverton, and she was at the conference because her school was piloting a new partnership program with regional businesses, and she had been asked to represent the faculty side of the planning committee. She had the slightly bewildered look of someone who had been dropped into a room full of people who spoke a professional language she was still learning. We talked through the rest of the break, then we skipped the next panel and kept talking in the corridor. Beverly had been a widow for 3 years. Her husband had died of a heart attack at 58, unexpected, no warning. She had spent the first year just getting through it, and the 2 years since figuring out who she was without the structure of a 24-year marriage holding her daily life in place. She said it matter-of-factly without performing sadness or resilience. Just here's what happened and here's where I am now. I liked that about her immediately. We had dinner that evening at a quiet place in the Pearl District. I told her about Renee, the short version. Enough that she understood why I was newly single at 61 without getting into everything. She listened without trying to fix it or frame it or tell me what it meant. When I finished, she said, "That sounds like an incredibly hard year." That was all. It was exactly the right amount. Beverly and I have been seeing each other for 3 months. We take it slow because that's what both of us actually want. No pretending things are simpler than they are. No rushing towards something just because being alone feels worse. Just 2 people in their 50s and 60s who have both lost versions of the lives they thought they had, figuring out what comes next without making promises they can't keep. It's honest. That matters more to me now than it ever did before. I still think about that Tuesday morning in October, standing in my office with a trash bag in my hand and a pregnancy test that didn't belong to my reality. I had a choice in that moment: react and lose everything, or go quiet, go careful, and trust that the truth was enough to work with if I gave it time and room. I chose the second one. And I want to say something to you directly, because I think some of you are sitting with a version of what I went through. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it's someone you trusted completely who turned out to be building something behind your back with what you gave them. Here's what I learned. The most powerful thing you can do when someone is trying to take what you built is refuse to become someone you don't recognize. Stay sharp. Stay documented. Stay legal. Let the truth do the work instead of your anger, because rage burns fast and leaves you with nothing. Patience, used correctly, leaves you with everything they tried to take and none of the wreckage. Comment, "I built this," if this story hit close to home. And subscribe because there are more stories like this one. About the men who built something real, got hit hard, and chose to rebuild smarter instead of burning it all down. The best move you can make is the one they never saw coming.